Dun, 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 dun. Welcome to the crew review.
Hello.
Yes.
Hey.
I made that theme song up just now. Practiced it in my head twice, and there you go.
I couldn't have told a difference, you know.
Good. I'm glad. Was it good? How would you rate it on your crew? What was your crew review of my intro?
A 3.
Wow, that's better. That's better than 1 and 2.
That's a typical Beth review. Typical Beth.
I mean, that's for a 3. That's for Beth. Woo!
That's high praise.
It's pretty awesome. All right, so we did Knives Out as the movie of this week, and guys, this movie was amazing.
was a
I
good
hope
movie.
y'all watched it. If you didn't, that's okay.
It was
But-
an ingenious riff on classic murder mysteries.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And we all saw it in theaters back in, when was it, November?
November.
November,
Yeah.
yeah. And loved it. We went in, well, I went in with 0 expectations, had no idea what to think about this thing. I just knew it was some kind of mystery movie. And I think we even debated between that and another movie, what to see, perhaps, if I remember correctly. And
You're asking the wrong person right
okay. Anyway, and I was kind of like, I guess we'll see Knives Out. And it was awesome. So anyway, I
now. It
liked
was
it a lot.
very good.
So anyway, it is available on Redbox and DVD, as you can see. That's actually a Blu-ray.
I was going to say, it's a Blu-ray.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
guys. I'm sorry.
But we rewatched it, and it's still great. It's still a good one.
It was still
Nothing
good.
changed.
Yeah, it's exactly like it
It
was
was
in
the
theaters.
same
Still
movie.
fine.
What a surprise.
They even used the same actors, had the same music.
And the same
The
script.
screen
Oh my
was a little
goodness.
smaller, but that's okay. It was still pretty good.
Acceptable.
I mean,
There, you could pause it. Bathroom breaks. It was great.
wow.
Bathroom breaks are needed. So,
Yes.
Yes.
Beth, what is the synopsis of this?
Yes. So Knives Out is an original whodunit film, which was very exciting not to have any context on what we were walking into. But it tells the story of a private detective, Benoit Blanc is his name. Get that alliteration going on right there.
Benoit Blanc.
And he is working to solve the mysterious death of Harlan Thornby, who is a murder mystery novelist, has built a massive empire, and has now died. The circumstances are a little bit mysterious, and all of his family seems to have motive for being the murderer. So that's what this film is about.
That's pretty solid.
Thank
We
you.
won't reveal anything just yet. We're still spoiler free, but I would like to ask each of you, going in or at the end of the movie before they had the big reveal,
Yes.
did you figure it out? Kinley?
I did not figure it out.
Figure it out.
Honest answers.
I
Yeah,
had,
honest answers.
we'll talk specifically as we get on, and I'll
Yeah.
tell you what I thought halfway through, but I did not figure it out.
Okay, Beth.
I did not figure it all the way out. No.
I like your phrasing. I did not
All
figure
the
it
way.
all the
All
way
the
out.
way.
There
That
were-
means no.
Like I had a lot of the pieces figured out before they revealed them, but I was holding out for something to happen that didn't happen, and I was a little disappointed by it, to be honest.
I knew exactly who did it after I saw it, but in the moment, I did not. So I didn't know either. Did you know?
No, no, none.
I was just curious if anybody did. So anyway,
Well, I think one of the reasons we enjoyed it so much is because it's an original story. It's a refreshing murder mystery because it's an original story. Like, we're not taking, I mean, it has inspirations from other, detectives and pieces like here. They kind of pull together inspiration, but it's so original. It's not, I can't think of anything like it, when you
Yeah.
when you look at it. So, and the way it's done is really good. So the originality is what really gives it, in my opinion, a lot of points. So.
and Daniel Craig
That's
with
nice.
that accent is hilarious. I love it.
Got that
He
little
does so
Foghorn
well with
Leghorn.
it.
Yeah.
What was that other movie? It was some racing movie he had that accent in. I don't remember what it was called, but he also had that. I didn't see it. I just remember the trailer for it, but it sounded just like this accent.
I don't know.
But it was great.
Don't-
So the movie starts out in a house.
Are we hitting spoilers?
Oh, I'm sorry.
John, how dare you?
I'm so sorry.
How dare
One day
you?
I'll get it right.
Spoilers ahead. All right, here we go.
Yes, so if you have not watched and you don't want things spoiled, you should pause and then come back. Otherwise, Here we go.
Yes. Okay. So it starts out in the house. There's two policemen who arrive, and the family in question is the Thornbys. Is that how you say it?
Thornbys?
Thrombey.
Thornbys, that's right.
There's an R in there.
And I almost said Thornberries, and I was like, that's
Thornberries.
not
That's
normal.
another movie.
Nigel.
Thornbys with an M.
What was her
Thrombey.
So you find out from the very beginning that the estate owner, whose name is
Harlan.
Harlan.
Yeah. I
Me
knew
with these
that.
names, I tell you. I am
We just
terrible.
watched it.
I know. Literally, we watched it.
Just
and then-
watched it.
So Harlan Thronby.
Thrum with an M.
It is an M. Somebody else do this.
You got it.
You
You
did
got it.
great.
Yeah,
You're doing
I'm doing great, right?
We're
I'm
here
doing
for you.
great.
You are doing
Okay,
good.
thanks. So, Harlan Thrombey, you find out who the estate owner, he's had his 85th birthday, and the evening of his 85th birthday, he was murdered or killed himself.
Duh.
Who knows?
He died. Either way, he
Either
died.
way, he died. There's a pool of blood and a knife, and
It looks like he's slit his throat.
it does. But not all the facts are out, and the police are questioning each of the family members, and they question them one by one in front of this really cool chair that has lots of knives around the back of it and one axe that bothered Beth. And
Yes.
Is it on the cover? No, it's not. Thought I'd show.
It's kind of
but-
like a little hatchet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Knife.
everything else on that wheel is a knife, and then we have this one axe, and it just really bothered me.
And
I like consistency.
That's funny. So yeah, we open up with the first scene is the housekeeper finding his body.
That's right.
And then we go to this girl waking up kind of disturbed in bed, and we find out that that was his nurse, and we pick up about a week later, and she gets called in by the son, called to the house, and the police are going to ask her some questions. They're still kind of investigating, although everybody right now is thinking it was a suicide, that he slit his throat, all right? And the police have already gone through this initial questioning with all the family, but like John said, they're asking each family member questions in front of the kind of knife circle, I guess. It's kind of a backdrop thing that was pretty cool. So we just have them kind of setting the stage through this and some flashbacks here of the 85th birthday party, different,
Who was where,
relationships to the deceased, all the different family. And so we meet his daughter, his son-in-law, his daughter-in-law, and his son through these questions. But then during the questions, there are two police detectives that are asking questions, and then there's this random guy that keeps playing piano notes, and we find out that he is a detective, as Beth mentioned, Benoit Blanc, with that southern accent, that southern drawl, Benoit, kind of talking like this.
Can we just pause for a moment and talk about the fact that his name is Benoit, which is French, but he has a very southern accent.
He does. I think it was more of I think he was from, in my opinion, Louisiana. Had that kind of
Yeah.
Louisiana,
Well, that's true. It could be
southern accent.
Louisiana would make sense. But I just
yeah.
thought it was funny because you have Benoit.
Benoit Blanc.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good part. So played by Daniel Craig,
Yes.
who was, as we said, superb in this role.
Love him.
And he plays that kind of key, just the same piano key a couple times, and that's the only thing he says. He's not asking questions. He's just sitting in the back, and the family just like. And one of them finally says, "Who are you? Who are you?" And we find out he's a private detective, a very famous private detective who'd been hired to investigate the death of Harlan Thrombey. Although everybody's wondering why, because they've ruled it a suicide. So they're wondering what's going on. Now, a nice little piece of trivia that we picked up on was that every time he plays that key, the other detective asks kind of what time did you arrive to the party. So that was his signal to kind of get back on track.
Yes.
And so that was pretty cool. And they have a lot of like Easter eggs and like hidden pieces in this movie throughout. So that was really nice. So pick it up. Where are we going next? What's happening?
Where are we going, Beth?
Well, so we find out that Harlan had 3 children. So his daughter, she has started her own real estate empire, and then her husband helps her with that. His son Walt runs the publishing company where he publishes all of his books, and like they get them translated into multiple languages and things like that. He's always wanting his dad to do films, but they just are strictly books right now. And then his daughter-in-law, because his other son has passed away 15 years prior, she has her own like skincare line and is a little bit of a hippie. Has
Kind of out there.
Kind of, you know, she has some interesting vibes for the family, but they're all kind of like self-made. And then we have the grandson, whose name is Ransom, which is just fabulous because we're in a murder mystery house. Love it.
So this is his daughter Linda, played by
Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis, and her husband is Richard. This is
Yes.
their son Ransom.
Yeah, and so apparently he's just living the life. Like, he's a party boy and doesn't do anything, and everyone's kind of like holding grudges against him because he doesn't have a job per se.
And Ransom is played by
Chris Evans.
Chris
Yes.
Evans, who does a great job in this role
So
as
who-
well.
do
My
you
heart.
like Chris Evans playing better as Captain America, or he's like a sweet, kind-hearted person, or do you like him playing more like this party kind of character? Because he plays both of them really well.
He does. He's a versatile actor.
He played and also kind of this same kind of feel of a role in Fantastic Four, where he's like kind of like the
Yeah.
I don't really know a good term, but
Hothead.
yeah, the hot. Yeah, because I think
I
I personally
get it.
like
thought you
him.
said something else.
I thought I like him better as like a hothead. I think he does. He's great as Captain America as well, but I like him better in this kind of a role.
Hot take.
Hot
take.
take, hot head, hot podcast. Let's go. Hot room. It's really hot in here.
It's a little warm. It's a little warm.
So, you know, we've got everybody's like self-made, and then they get to the point where they've all told their story. The funny thing is every time they tell their story about what happens during the birthday party, they always are telling themselves as the ones around the Harlan, the grandfather, the patriarch of the family. They're putting the cake in front of him. So every time they tell the story, like it'll be Linda and Richard and their son Ransom, or then it'll be Walt and his wife and their son. And so like they're always like putting themselves as close and close.
And putting down the other
Yes.
brothers and sisters in the
Yes.
family. So.
And they also talk about. He questions each one of them about the nurse, Marta. Reference. No, you're good. Every time they reference the nurse, they say she's from a different country. It was hilarious.
That is
Uruguay, Honduras, Brazil. What else did they say? Paraguay.
That was another
Ecuador.
one first.
Ecuador.
Ecuador, thank you.
Yeah,
That's what I
it was so
thinking of.
funny. It's like a running
She's from
joke
Brazil.
throughout
She's
the whole
from
movie.
wherever.
Where did they actually say exactly where she was
No,
from?
No.
you never know. You never find out. So.
But they're all just
Sorry.
terrible people, which is what the point was driving home.
They
like
are.
they don't really know who she is.
They're pretty terrible people here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they all have motive. And then we find out that poor Marta has a condition where she can't lie. Because if she lies, she throws up, which is
She throws up.
really awkward.
Okay,
Is that a real thing?
that's what I was going to say. Is this a real thing? Have you ever heard of anybody
A
who literally...
regurgitation. What did they call it? It was a regurgitation something.
We have.
I don't remember. It was something weird. And it
Yeah.
was, I don't know if it was an official title, if it was just the way that Benoit Blanc was saying it. You have a, whatever, to regurgitate, whatever. I don't know. But that's interesting. I don't know if that's a real thing.
I don't know.
So, anyway, if you know of anybody, let us know. We would love to interview them on the
Google
podcast.
Yes.
Google that, John.
But yeah, so poor thing. And so Benoit Blanc is talking to her about the family, and he tried to get her to say something about that night. And basically, he's calling into question, is Richard having an affair? And she tries to like cover up because she doesn't want to throw the family under the bus. Like, she's just here because they've asked her. Like, she loves Harlan. She's sad he's gone. And so she kind of tells a little white lie to protect the family, and then she just throws up, like, in a pot nearby. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, like, that's actually a thing. Like, you really can't tell a lie.
She will literally throw up. She cannot keep herself from telling a lie. So
Yeah.
that was good. So they end up bringing her kind of into questioning. And as she's come home to the family, it's evident she was not at the funeral. And every time she hugs kind of and greets one of the siblings, they say, Marta, I'm so sorry you couldn't come to the funeral. And they would say, I wanted you there, but I was outvoted. Each one of them said that. And it makes you
They're
think,
the worst.
maybe not, you know. And we find out, this is important too, we find out when everybody's kind of giving their side of the story of what happened the night before or the week before during the birthday party, that Ransom, Harlan and his grandson had a big fight, and Ransom leaves before the party starts. He stormed out, and that's kind of setting the stage as him as a hothead and not like everybody's favorite person. Everybody kind of is at odds with each other, but then they all kind of hate on him a little bit too. So anyway, so we sit down to talk to Marta, and then this is one of the most interesting things I've ever seen done in a murder mystery. She flashes back when they ask her what happened that night. She flashes back, and we find out
Exactly what happens.
exactly what happens.
At the very beginning.
I like that.
Just a few minutes into the movie, 15, 20 minutes in maybe, we find out what happens. So tell us what happens, somebody.
Oh, so she is tending to Harlan Thrombey with an M. Did I do it right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Good job.
She's tending to him with her nurse duties of giving him some medicine, which was called, not the morphine, but what was the other thing?
We don't know.
Some
It
pain
It was a pain
medicine.
medication.
It was a pain medication. That
He
she
gets
gives
some
him.
kind of nightly
So
medication.
He gets 100 milligrams of this every single night, and he also gets 3 milligrams of morphine in order to help him sleep. And you find out that she actually gave him 100 milligrams of morphine and not the other because she had the bottles mixed.
They were playing a game, a little game
Yeah.
with stones, and he was a little drunk and made a joke and like flipped it over, and all of her
He's
stuff
losing.
went.
He's a
And
little sore loser.
it looks like he had a permanent IV in
Yeah.
there, and so she just, because he gets it every day, and she just grabbed the vials off the floor and injected him with his medication, and it was the wrong stuff. And she realizes what happens.
Yes.
And he jokes and says, he's like writing in his notebook. He's like, "That's a great." What was his quote?
That's a great. He just says that's a great way, like method of death.
Yeah.
That would be, I gotta write this down because he's a murder mystery writer.
Yeah,
That's how
and
he's
that's what he
like,
does.
So he's like, so now how many milligrams? And then he's like, how many am I supposed to get? And she's like, 3. And he's like, that's a great deal less.
That's nice, yeah. So fortunately, she's got some antidote in her medical bag, supposedly, just in case this were to happen.
Yeah.
But guess what? She cannot find it. It's gone. And so he, being very, in my opinion, sound mind, just
Yeah.
says, all right, well, there's nothing we can do about it. I'm dead. She's freaking out. She's crying.
Ready to call an ambulance.
And he says, and she said something, he would start having tremors in 5 minutes, and then in 10 minutes, probably be dead. And it would take an ambulance about 15 minutes to get there. So he begins to tell her exactly what to do to keep her out of trouble, because we find here that her mother is here illegally. So she's legal, her sister's legal, but her mother's here illegally, and he's worried.
And he wants to protect him.
Yes, and so you can tell they have a really good friendship here, but we definitely see him go into his murder mystery brain a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I like how in this second viewing, I caught something where he said right before they go through him getting the medicine, he even says something like, "I'm not afraid of death," or something like that. He says, "I'm ready for it," or whatever, and then it goes straight into it. And I was like, oh, he's like, look. And he really was. He was like very peaceful about it. Like he was serious when he said it. He really was. He was okay with it.
well, and that's important to bring up, because the reason he says that, we find out when everybody earlier is kind of giving their account of what happened that night before. It shows flashbacks, so we kind of see what actually happened, and then we see what they tell the police.
Yeah.
So right now, when we're finding out what happened to Harlan, we're still in a flashback from Marta. We haven't heard what she says, but we find out in the flashbacks from the family that Harlan was kind of cutting some people off. So his son that runs the publishing firm, Walt, really wanted to get the movie rights for the books to try and make movies, get money, and he kept pushing him on that. And he fired him. He says,
Dad, are you firing me?
he says, oh, we'll talk about it in the morning. Don't worry
We'll talk
about it.
details
My
tomorrow."
mind's made up, right? In a very nice,
You've been
but
cut off.
authoritative way, like, you ain't doing this anymore,
Yeah.
And then his daughter-in-law, Joni, we find out that Harlan's paying for her
Daughter's tuition.
daughter's tuition, and
pays her a salary.
and she gets like a cost of living thing, but she's been getting the tuition checks from two different people in Harlan's office, and so she's been double dipping, stealing $100,000 for the past 4 years. So $400,000 she has double dipped from his funds, and so he's saying no more. He wrote her a check for the last tuition check, and he said, "This is the last money you're going to get from me. You are cut off." All right.
And he says, "My mind is made up."
My mind
says
is
that
made
every
up. He
time.
says it
Yes.
every time. He says,
I
"My
like
mind
that.
is made up." And then we see he also cuts off, or he doesn't cut off, but he confronts his son-in-law, Richard, right? And there is, like Beth mentioned earlier, there's proof that Richard was having an affair, all right? And so he tells Richard, "You have to tell her or I will," talking about Linda, Richard's wife. And he shows him a note that he's written for Linda, that he's going to give to Linda if Richard doesn't tell him. So when he says, "I'm ready for death, I'm not afraid to die," but he says he wants to see this mess with this family get cleaned up because they're all selfish. They've, Linda kind of made her own way, but everybody else is kind of like riding his coattails a little bit and not really living on their own. So it was very interesting, like you said, how he just says, "I'm ready for death," and then he's got to die immediately after that. So anyway, so talk about his plan to get Marta out of this situation.
Yes. So we're also seeing this through Marta's mind. So she's trying to remember, and he's telling her the plan. So he's like, "Okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to loudly go down the steps, and you're going to make note of the time because, Walt's out there smoking a cigar. So you'd be like, tell him the time, tell him you're leaving, get in the car, drive off." And then he's like, "Make sure you turn off before the elephant." And then she's like, "Oh, wait, did he say before the elephant or after the elephant to avoid the security camera?" And she can't remember. So we hear it both ways because she's trying to remember how he said it. And then he says, "You're going to go back, climb up the trellis, go through the hidden, the fake window, and then come back, get my robe and my cap, and walk down the stairs so that he sees what he thinks is me. The window is blurry, so he's not going to tell that it's you. So do that. That'll be 20 minutes after you've left, and so that way you are no longer a suspect in this, and then go back up, and then go back down the trellis. Make sure you don't see anyone." So, and he's like, also, like, the dogs are outside. They know you. They're not going to bark, so everything's going to be great. Here is his masterful plan. So she's freaking out, doesn't want to do it, still wants to call the ambulance, but Harlan, in fact, does slit his own throat in a very dramatic way. I mean, if you're a murder mystery writer, you got to go out dramatic.
He's got a knife kind of propped up on a table next to him that he was playing with earlier anyway, because I guess when you do that, you're rich like that and you write murder mysteries, you just play with knives.
Just
So,
Stab it
living
down.
on the edge.
yeah.
He has a great line right before he unfolds his plan, but he talks about how only an amateur, how an amateur wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a knife and a stage prop, which was great. So that was like a nice little seed that's planted for us.
Love that line.
Yeah. So Marta does go through her plan. She can't remember about the security camera, bless her. So she pulls off before the elephant, which is actually wrong. She should have pulled off after the elephant on the
considering
driveway.
all that she's gone through, she did pretty well going through the plan.
I just wish a
being in
little
shock.
common sense had been used though, because why would a security camera catch you after the elephant?
Yeah.
But alas, So she does this. She climbs up the trellis. The trellis snaps, and so she does.
Piece breaks off.
Piece breaks off. Yikes! So she goes up, follows all the way through the plan, goes back down, and then she's caught by Harlan's mother.
Harlan's mother. Let's talk for a second.
Yes, great Nana.
Harlan is 85.
85.
Just celebrated his 85th birthday.
And then they mention his mother. And then the cops are like, "Wait a minute, his mother? How old is she?" Nobody knows.
Who knows?
We have no idea.
Now,
She's so old, no one knows.
here's a fun fact for you. Let me scroll back to my fun fact. Where was it? There it is. So, that's not it. Basically, the actress who plays his mother, she's actually 84 years old. He is actually 90 years old.
Christopher Plummer.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, an 84-year-old played a 90-year-old's mother.
They made her look really old, though.
They did.
She-
They did. The
They
makeup.
missed
Oh,
Looked
there it
ancient.
is.
She looked ancient, but
Let's talk for a second, though, about, and this, I don't know if we're going to have time to go through every piece of the story because
Yeah.
it's pretty complicated, but,
Yeah.
and so we're just going to talk through some pieces of what happened, but let's talk a minute about Christopher Plummer and how well he did in this role as 90 years old.
he's amazing.
As
He did
at
not
90
look-
year old.
He bounced around like he was 80.
Yeah.
Not 90.
Do you remember a few years ago when all that stuff happened with Kevin Spacey? All that and stuff came out, and not a good person, and they ended up having to recast him in a role for, what was the name of that movie? I'm trying to think of the name of the movie, but it was based on the true story of the billionaire whose grandson was abducted or something. I can't
Yes.
remember. Anyway, I'll look it up in a sec. But Kevin Spacey was supposed to play that billionaire, and he already filmed all the pieces, but the movie had not been released and was in post-production. They cut him out and cast Christopher Plummer, and Christopher Plummer filmed all of those scenes in 15 days.
What?
In 15
For an
days.
entire movie?
From the time they cast him, he was
Oh
done
my
with
goodness.
that in 15 days.
Wow.
They
That's
redid
true,
all the
though.
That's
scenes.
impressive.
He's a true
And so
pro.
this was 2 or 3 years ago. So late 80s right now. Is that not spectacular?
crazy.
I just thought that was super neat. I just wanted to talk about how wonderful Christopher Plummer is for a second.
Oh man, so good. But yeah, like great Nana.
All the
sees
money in the
her.
world. Sorry.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
prepared.
That was it.
Yeah, she sees him,
Yep.
sees her go down the trellis, and she says, "Ransom, are you back again?" And so, poor great Nana. Nobody believes her. Nobody talks to her. She's just ancient. And
Because
she
she's
just
well in her
exists.
hundreds, so.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So then Marta leaves, and so now we flash back to the present where they're interviewing her, and Harlan knows she can't lie, and so he's like giving her advice of like tell pieces of the truth so that you don't get caught, but like here's the plan, here's what you need to do. So she makes it through her story, and then somehow like slips out, goes to the bathroom, and she does throw up because she has tweaked a few things in her story. But
Still
she
stresses her
managed,
out,
Yes,
so.
she did manage
There's
to
some
control it.
moments where she's like, she'll lie, but she can hold it for a little bit and then get away from people to throw up.
Yeah.
But he did a really good job, and I thought it was good writing here too. When they ask her questions, what happened, she said things like, we were playing a game, which was true. At one point, he flipped over the board, which was true. I left and drove out the front gate, which was true. Stuff
Yeah.
like that. So, well written there. Well done.
Yeah, so she didn't actually lie. She just conveniently left out pieces.
Well, I mean, talking about how she told the pieces of truth when she was talking about what kind of meds he was given, she said, since the time of his accident, I have been giving him this. So she didn't specifically say that night,
Yeah.
but that's exactly what he gave
Yep.
her. So I thought that
That was good too.
was
Yeah.
a good piece of information to share.
Yeah. Indeed.
There you go. So there you go. So after this, I don't know how this happens, but the detective just kind of takes her on as and they had a memorial for him that night, and then there was a
Yeah.
scene between Marta and the detective kind of in the courtyard in the dark, and he kind of like brings her on as
As his Watson.
Yeah, as his Watson. He says
Literally
the game's a
calls
foot
her
Watson.
Watson.
Yeah.
Which
That's
is
a little
which is funny, so because we know what's happened,
Yeah.
we know what we've seen,
Yes.
and then we're just watching him try to figure it out and her knowing, and we just have all these moments where she's trying to cover it up a little bit. The dog tries to bring in a piece of the
trellis that broke
that
off.
broke off, and she like
She
throws
throws it
it while
away.
he's not looking.
That's so funny.
We've got a part where they're going through the woods and they find, she's walking ahead of them and she sees footprints. So she walks the same footprint she was walking, and and then they go to the guardhouse to look at the film, the tape, and she takes it because the guard guy talks about how much better life is with this new updated equipment, and then we see all these old huge TVs, VHS player that does
Technology.
And, I know.
All
But she
this
takes it
modern
and with the magnet, scrambles the tape a little
Is
bit.
that really, can you really mess up VHS with
Yeah.
magnets?
Yeah.
I was wondering that. 'Cause
It's a real danger.
Yeah. So that was neat. Just all these moments. We kind of have those scenes where they're trying to investigate, figure out what happened, and she just kind of tries to save herself a little bit here and there, not expecting to be thrown into not only as a suspect, but now as a detective in the murder, which she thinks she's caused, So
Yes.
anyway.
So then we get to the will reading. which
The will reading.
is always exciting. And for whatever reason, the family brings her along. I don't know why, but they do. And the detective tells her that these things are normally really boring, and it's basically like somebody reading your taxes aloud to you, which sounds super thrilling.
Nothing can excite me more, folks. Ooh.
So the lawyer comes in. I thought this was so funny. But like he comes in and his assistant is carrying like these 2 giant boxes of paper. Like,
She's just a short little woman. Just
like he's not helping her at all. But she has 2 boxes of paper that they're bringing in for this will reading. They never rifle through any of these papers. It was a waste of time. But anyway, they all gather in the library. No.
they're in like a sitting
Some
room
sitting-
waiting,
fancy
and
room.
but the will reading is in the library.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, Ransom finally shows up.
we get to see him in real time for the first time
Yes.
here,
Yes.
not in flashbacks.
He doesn't show up for the funeral, but he shows up for
Mm-hmm.
the will reading.
Yes.
Interesting.
Eating cookies, telling
Eating
everyone
cookies.
off.
Yeah, he goes straight in. The cops stop him on the porch and they're like, "Hey, we need to ask you some questions." And he just looks at them and just kind of gives them a nod and walks in and gets cookies.
We do find out from Walt's son. Walt is Harlan's son.
Yeah.
So Harlan's grandson is not a good kid.
He's weird
basically like a
and
kind
So
of
weird.
teenage white supremacist, and they make him out to be pretty terrible. And that creates just a lot of issues with the family. And then Walt's wife is really delicate. She's kind of like spooked easily. So Walt's family's pretty out there. But he was in the bathroom between kind of the sitting area and Harlan's office when Harlan and Ransom were having their fight the night of his birthday, and kind of overheard some
Yeah.
key words, and we find out that Harlan has told Ransom that he's being written out of the will. He's not getting a red dime, and then Ransom says something like, you'll pay or whatever, and storms out. And so the family, right before the will reading, everybody's kind of saying, well, this is the best thing that could happen to you. It'll be hard for you, but the family's thinking they're going to get money, and
Yep.
Ransom's been written out. So.
So we get to the will reading, and they open this envelope with a knife, which seems a little dramatic to me because it's one of those manila envelopes that has a tab. Like you literally could have just unfolded the metal clip thing and pulled the paper out.
They
but
had to use a
But
knife.
knives out.
Knives
Knives
out,
out.
so-
Everybody got knives out, even the lawyer.
yeah, it's 1 page, and they find out that the house, all the money, and the publishing company and all of its assets have been given to Marta, and the rest
Everything.
of the family has been completely cut off.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows through camera angles that Linda, his daughter, and her husband kind of wanted the house. She's a realtor.
Yeah.
She kind of wants the house. Joni wants the money. And then we have Walt wanting the rights of the publishing company so he can do what he wants with it. And they didn't get
Anything.
nothing.
Not
And
a
Martha's
single red
completely in
dime.
shock. She's like, "Wait, what?"
Marta had no
And they
idea.
all stop and look at her.
Ransom laughs, cackles, leaves.
Yeah, he just laughs and walks out.
Yeah.
So then the family comes charging after Marta because, first of all, what did she do to con their father into doing this? And also they want her to give them the stuff back. So they all chase her out of the house. She's trying to leave. Her car fails, which is such a tragic moment because they're beating on the windows. Ransom then
Pulls up in his Beamer.
pulls up in his Beamer and says, "Come on, get in," and he drives her away. Then he takes her to a place where they get dinner. She eats beans and pork, which is a weird choice.
Beans and sausage.
Sausage.
Sausage, yes.
Sausage.
Yeah. So, but he
that
basically
it
has set
matters.
her up so that she will, throw up if she tells a lie.
You hear him order at the beginning of the restaurant. Marjo's real upset. And he says,
Yeah.
can I get an extra bowl? And it's just this big empty bowl. And he's fed her this beans and sausage, and then says, "What happened to my grandfather?" And puts that
Yeah.
In front of her.
because he knows she can't lie or she'll throw up.
So she knows she has to tell him everything, and then she does. So
Yes.
that's it. That's all I wanted to say. Nice little continue.
Well, thank you for that statement. So now Ransom knows the full story. She switched up the medications. Like, this is not good. And so he decides to help her out. Like, you've gotten this far. Like, you only have to go a little bit further.
and he says, don't give the money back. You know, she's thinking, what do I do? Meanwhile, the family's trying to figure out, is she going to give them the inheritance back? Can they challenge this? And they find out
Override
if
it.
someone who benefits from a will has a part in the person's
slayer
death.
rule.
Yeah, they forfeit the inheritance. So, and they find that out from the lawyer. And I just want to pause a minute and talk about the lawyer, played by Frank Oz, who big name. Writer, director, voice actor, voiced was the original voice of Miss Piggy in the Muppets. He was with Jim Henson and was the voice of Yoda, if you didn't know that. So,
Speaking of, while we're talking about Star Wars, Rian Johnson also
Yes.
directed what was
The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi.
Jedi.
I knew it was one of them, and it was not.
Not the very last one?
Not the very
That's
last
right.
one.
Okay.
It was the one before. It was not very good. It was probably my least favorite Star Wars movie, but he definitely redeemed himself with this. So.
he did a good job with this one.
Nice little tangent there.
Well, talking about Yoda, I thought I'd bring it up.
Yes,
So.
valid.
Ryan Johnson. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And we got some more trivia about him as we get towards the end. So,
Yes.
anyway, keep going, Beth. What happens next?
She-
It's a lot of story.
She was at the restaurant with Ransom.
Yep, so he now knows the truth.
So then she goes home. It's like the next day, right?
Yep, she
Okay.
goes home.
It's hit the media.
The media is
That
all
she's
outside of her house.
Inheriting the lot.
Yeah, so her mom and sister want to know, are you really rich? Did this really happen? Or like what's going on? There's a bunch of lawyers who've been here. So her mom hands her this huge stack of mail and she's kind of flipping through it and sees that there's an unmarked envelope in the stash. And so she's going to slip out the back because the media's everywhere. Walt shows up. Walt, come on, what you doing, man?
Threatens her, basically, says we can try and help your mom with our resources. She says, your resources are now my resources. She's kind
Yeah.
of mean. So she leaves him in the hallway, goes back
That
in the
was such
house.
a good
so.
move on her part because
Yeah.
here he is like trying to threaten her and
Being
say
a jerk.
basically like we're gonna get your mom deported, but if you like give us some money back, you can prevent that from happening. And she's like, oh well, it's my money now, so I think I'm good. Thank you,
That was good.
which was a good power move.
Yeah.
So she opens the envelope and finds out that her medical license has been photocopied on top of this.
The tag from
The
her
tag
bag.
from her
Tag
bag,
from her
yeah.
bag.
That
yeah.
was missing, her medical bag.
Has been photocopied on top of the toxicology report, but they have not shown the results of the toxicology.
Just the top.
And it says, I know what you did.
I know what you did. So now she's got to deal with somebody who knows what's going on.
Yes.
So she takes this to Ransom, tells him what happened, and it's a copy. And he says somebody's got an original of this report.
Yeah.
So they head down to the chief coroner's office, and it is
It's
burning. It's burning. The firemen are there, fire department's there putting out the fire. We also see that the detectives and, yes, Benoit Blanc
Benoit
are
Blanc.
there. And Benoit actually sees Marta and Ransom in the car and says, come on, and starts calling her. And then she just takes off in her little car. And it is the most anticlimactic police
Yes.
chase ever because her little car cannot get over 60.
It's like struggling to even hit 60. and-
We have there's a good line where Ransom's like, are you flooring it right now? She says, I am literally flooring it right now. You know, it was just really funny. So.
And then Benoit Blanc pulls up next to her. He's like, call me.
Yeah, his cars, can get up there
Yeah,
faster. He's
it's
like,
like, what
she
are you
keeps trying to
doing?
call her and she keeps muting it. And so she's getting in the city, kind of outruns him in alleyways, she thinks, and they're getting ready because she got an email, or Ransom said, check your email and see if you got,
Yeah.
any other follow-up about what to do from this person. And they said, meet me at this location at 10 a.m. And it was about 9:30, so they're trying to get there by 10.
Yeah.
So she can meet up, and guess what happens?
Dun, dun, dun.
She really didn't lose them in the city. She only went in a block,
caught.
and the cars pull up. So, but again, I'm sitting here the first time I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, Benoit Blanc is not smart
No,
because
he's dumb. He's like, did he tell you to drive?
did he
She's
tell
like,
you to drive? I bet he did. And they
Yes.
arrest Ransom. They arrest Ransom.
Yes.
And I would just and you're thinking this the whole movie earlier too because all these clues keep popping up and she just like behind his back is like
Yeah.
like I'm
erasing
just like
things.
oh
and-
Benoit you're
and, like,
so dumb.
She just inherited everything, so why are they
I
not
don't
looking
think
at her at all?
He's not dumb. He's not observant. And as a detective, I feel like you should be. Like,
You should be
You should be
observant.
seeing all these things.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking the first time I'm watching this movie. I'm thinking he's just not picking up on it. He's not getting it. So, so she he decides Benoit's going to ride with her. They're taking Ransom to the police station, and he said, I'm going to ride with Marta, and we're going to talk about it. And so they start heading to the police station as well, and she says, I need to make a quick stop real quick, which again, is so obvious, but she is going to go meet with the person who's blackmailing her, knows what's going on. So she parks the car on the street, goes in
A hair salon.
which is next door to the address, goes out the back.
Nobody questions her.
She goes in the back, probably
she just
the office.
walks in, she knows what she's doing. They're like,
This proves my theory that if you go anywhere with confidence, no one's going to question you.
Beth has always said this. Look
Shows
like
us
you
the
know what you're
test.
doing. and
I
no one's
have.
gonna-
you have.
I have.
Would you
It
like
works.
to share any stories?
I mean, not at this time, but it does work.
I'll share a quick
Oh,
story.
I'd love to. Hear.
So, New York City, picture it, New York City, 2014. Me and two of my friends, we were on a youth choir mission trip. Remember, we went to New York that one year. You weren't there,
I
but we
wasn't
went. So we were walking around. We just wanted to go see Macy's. So we're walking through Macy's. I was getting Starbucks at every Starbucks place I could in New York
So
City.
many of them.
I know. I got a lot of Starbucks. And so we went in and we were just walking around and we kept going up. And they have the old wooden escalators. And so there was one
Those
that
are
had
cool.
tape over it, do not enter. And we just decided, I thought it was broken down, but I didn't want to walk around. So we went on up. And we find ourselves on the top floor of Macy's, and it was blocked off because there was a private cocktail party.
Oh.
And that we have accidentally crashed at the top of Macy's. And that was insane. And so we just walked around for about 5 minutes and got little gift bags and then left.
You got gift bags.
But I told the guys, I was like, Beth's always said, look like you know what you're doing, okay?
Oh, man.
And we did it. We were not dressed for this, but it definitely worked. So
There was
it works.
actually a time when all three of us were together for it was downtown it was around Christmas one year because we went to the Hyatt Hotel and there was like a
Yes.
business Christmas party going on and we just walked through and pretended like we were part of it. And
We crashed that one.
Yeah, we did. I remember that. Just confidence.
Just confidence. That's what you need.
Confidence.
So
That's
it
what
worked.
you-
It worked for Marta. It worked for Marta.
It works
so
for Marta, for
she goes
sure.
in the back of this abandoned store, which is where she was supposed to meet someone.
Okay, before we get to this point.
Yeah.
When you're watching this for the first time, who do you think is going to be the one who's blackmailing her? The first time you're watching it, who do you think is going to show up?
Oh,
idea.
I literally didn't know. I was like, I had no hunches.
No guesses at this point?
I didn't.
Okay.
What about you?
I was expecting her to find someone dead, and I was pretty close.
Yes.
I will say my heart started pounding when she walks in there and sees somebody sitting in a chair. I was like, this is like horror movie-ish. I was like, what's gonna happen?
You just see like the black silhouette of someone in a chair, and I
And a
could
shoe.
in a shoe,
Yeah.
and I was like, someone's like tied up in that chair. I was
Yeah.
like, they are.
Yeah.
I was right on for that one.
Yeah.
I will say.
Yeah.
I had no idea who, but I was right on with that piece. So,
Yes.
and we find out that it's Fran, the housekeeper. And at first you think Fran's dead because there's a spider crawling on her
Oh,
face.
I hated that scene.
It's like right on her eye, like right
On
here.
her face, right here.
And Marta's
Ugh.
medical bag is right there, so it
Yes.
looks like Fran has been the one that took it, and
Got
but
murdered.
then Fran has a jolt of energy,
Yes.
and so kind of is seizing, and Marta moves her to the ground, and Fran mumbles some stuff you can't really understand, and then she says, "You did this, and so we
Copy and stash.
copy and stash, and
What
so.
are the other words she mumbled?
Marta's scared, she jumps away from Fran, and then she decides, no, I'm going to help Fran. But you see a vial of morphine. It looks like she's been injected with morphine,
Yeah.
which is what Marta's injected Harlan with. So Marta calls 911 and starts helping out. And then we see the ambulance pull up, and Benoit's still on the street, and he's like
Listening to
listening to this
music.
music. It was funny.
And then he sees the ambulance. He's like, oh Lord.
So he gets out, and then we go to the hospital. We're at the hospital, and they're in the waiting room. And he's on the phone with the detectives telling them what happened, and then he gets off the phone, and Marta's like, all right, I've had enough of this. I can't do it anymore. Let me tell you what happened. And Ransom had told them the whole story, and they had just told Benoit, so that he wanted to hear it from her perspective. So they get in the
Yes.
car, drive back to the estate, and she says, I got to tell the family. And so she tells him everything that happened in the car, from beginning to end. So we get to the estate. She's going to read, she's going to tell the family what happened, and then it hits her that Fran said copy and stash. And Fran was inclined to smoke weed sometimes, we find out, because she gets stressed out. Fran was a little different as well.
Yeah.
And so they had revealed earlier that Fran kind of had a stash in the, I would call it the billiard room probably.
Yes.
Fran kind of had a stash. This whole house is like a set of Clue. They say that before, and it definitely is.
Oh
'cause,
yeah, it's really cool.
It's funny. But Fran had a stash of drugs in this little drawer on the mantle in the billiard
clock,
room.
and I love it because there's an angel,
Carved.
Oh,
a wooden
All
angel
right, yeah.
carved, and it's like,
Because you know there's a stash right there, right?
that was great.
And so she goes there and she finds a copy of the toxicology report and hands it to Benoit Blanc. And so they go into the sitting room and she's going to tell the family what happened. And she starts talking. And I like the camera shot because you see in the background, Benoit kind of opens the toxicology report and he's reading it, and then he runs in, stops her from what she's doing. Stop. No, you will not apologize. These people have not been good to you. And my official ruling for the death of Harlan Thrombey is suicide. And he takes her, and everybody's like, what's going
Case
on?
closed.
Case closed. You know?
Yeah.
He takes her into the library, and it's time for the big reveal of what truly happened.
Yes.
What truly happened. So I was thinking we were going to have, because all the families assembled, and so in some of Agatha Christie's books, specifically when she writes about a Belgian detective named Hercule Poirot, he always has these big finishes to his cases where he gathers all the suspects in one place and talks through the entire case, which I thought we were going to have with the whole family, but we do not. But he still talks through the whole case. So let's talk about what happened. Beth, tell us what happened.
Yes. Well, so first of all, I'll get back to like my theories.
Okay.
We can talk about our theories later. So they sit Marta down in the chair with all the knives around and basically bring in Ransom, and they're like talking through what has happened. And Benoit like rolls up his sleeves and takes off his jacket, and he like does
He's
some-
thinking, he's in the mood.
He's definitely like down to business. Like, here's the final thing. So he has the vials, and he realizes like it's easy to replace the stickers, and that she in fact had given Harlan the exact right dosage of each thing, because she has done it 1,000 times. Like there's like a tiny little distinct difference, and she just instinctively
And how they
knew-
feel, and the
how they feel.
viscosity,
Yeah.
some of those. And so when they knocked off, she just picked up, she kind of felt and picked up the right one.
Yeah, so she knew, and she gave him the right ones, and it was only when she saw the label that she freaked out. And so he reveals that after Ransom had been cut out of the wheel, he slipped up the trellis, switched the labels on the medicine, and then took the antidote away, which is crazy. And then he slipped back down. Great Nana saw him escaping and was like, Ransom!
Back again!
Back again! And so she had seen him leave the party earlier, and then now he's coming down the trellis, and that's weird, but she did see him. And so afterwards, everything has happened. He was going to go back up and get the vials and switch them back, but then realized that like he couldn't, like there's people there. His plan was thwarted.
Well, and I think
The
the goal
dogs.
for him was he was going to switch these vials.
Yeah.
She was going to inject him with the wrong medication, and he was going to die. And
Yes.
so in the morning, he would come, and they would find him dead, like asleep, you know, one of
Yeah.
those little situations. And that the nurse had done it, and he thought he was going to be able to get the vials and switch them back, because
Yeah.
he kind of, you know, he'd switched the liquid inside the vials. But
The dogs caught him.
the dogs caught him, and he wasn't able to. But the next morning, the problem was he didn't expect Harlan to have slit his throat, which we
Yes.
find out was completely unnecessary, because she picked up the right vial, even though it said morphine. It was his actual medicine. And
So Marta's in the clear.
Marta's in the clear. And I love Benoit at one point says, "You are a good nurse," you know, and she's just crying with an emotional moment.
I didn't murder him.
You
Yes.
know, but it just makes me so sad because it was a suicide. But he thought he was going to die. You know, it's
So
just like,
it's
oh my goodness, unnecessary. So anyway,
Yeah. So, and then like they're doing the flashbacks, and he reveals like, you know, Ransom found out what had happened for real
because Marta told him after the will reading.
when Marta told him that she had switched the vials by accident. She had switched the medications, and so he knows that the toxicology report will show that she was innocent.
There was nothing on it.
And so he's like, oh dang. So that's why he had to set the place on fire. That's why he's going after Fran, because he wants that toxicology report. And we realized that Fran got the report because her cousin worked at the coroner's office.
She was the receptionist
The
there.
receptionist there.
But Fran actually knew Ransom did it because Ransom came back during the funeral. John noted
Yes.
earlier
Yes.
that he was not at the funeral.
Yes.
And Fran he thought he would be alone in the house, but he wasn't. Fran saw him switch the contents of the vials back. And so she didn't know specifically what happened, but knew something happened and assumed that the toxicology report would show that he had done something.
Yes.
So Fran actually sent the blackmail letter
To Ransom.
and then Ransom just passes it on to Marta,
Kinda clever. It's
and
like,
kind
oh,
of plays
see,
He
her.
like
Yeah.
rips off his piece.
Yeah.
And then
There was a
gives-
piece at the bottom
With the time.
telling him what time to meet
Yeah.
at 8 a.m. that morning.
Yeah.
And so he rips that off and then sends Marta the email that says 10 a.m. So he's playing her the whole time.
And I didn't pick that up. I didn't pick up on that at the beginning of the movie. I mean, not at the beginning. Yeah.
The first
at the
time.
part. The first time when he was in the car with Marta, and they're at the police station where the evidence was. It was burned, and he says, "Check your email." I didn't even pick up that he was the one who was like, "Hey,
Yeah, and
you
he
should
drew
probably
it
check your
into-
email."
Which makes so
I was
much
like-
sense because it's like, if
Why?
someone's gonna blackmail you, it's like, oh, let me just check my email and see if they sent me an email. They're not gonna leave a paper trail.
No, emails are traceable.
Even electronic paper trail, right?
Yeah.
They're not gonna do that.
Yeah. So suspicious.
Yeah.
Don't be suspicious.
Don't be suspicious, all right?
Yes.
So we're wrapping up. We find out that, Ransom
Has confessed to killing Fran.
has confessed to killing
Yes.
Fran, but because he met Fran and kind of knocked her out with probably chloroform with a handkerchief and then gives her the morphine. But, we are at the hospital. Is Fran dead? Is she alive?
Yeah,
Yeah.
We don't know.
And so
Marta gets a phone call.
Marta gets a phone
At
call.
that moment, as
At
we're
that
discussing
moment,
it, yeah.
it's the hospital, and Marta says, "Oh, thank you. It's good to hear." And she says, "Fran's going to be all right." And he says, "Fran's alive?" And they're like, "Yeah." So as they're kind of, he's given his villain speech, as I like to call it at the end. He said, "What if I tried to kill Fran? So what? Fran's not even dead." And he said, "If you have a good lawyer like I do, these misdemeanors, I'll be out in no time, right?" Well, Marta says,
No, first she
"Oh yeah,
vomits
that's
all
right."
over his face.
She just
Which
looks
was
at him and
gross.
throws up.
It was so gross.
There's
It was
like little chunks of corn in
A little
there.
disgusting. But that means, and one of the detectives, was hilarious. He's a huge murder mystery buff. The whole time he's like this
Loves
kid
Benoit.
at Christmas. He's like, that's from this book. Every time they're going through Harlan's house, they're like, this is from his book where they did this and that. He's just excited. But he says, that means she's lying. That means she's lying when she throws up.
They're like, yeah, we know.
Yes,
He's very excited
yes.
that Fran is actually dead, all right? And he just confessed to it, and they recorded the whole conversation.
They have
So
him
they've got
as a
it.
murderer. Yes.
They've got it.
So then Ransom was like, hey, I'm already in it this far. I'm going to take it all the way.
They use a good phrase a couple times
Yeah.
already in the movie, in for a penny, in for a pound, which is, I'm already doing this, I might as well do this, right?
Go the full amount.
And so Ransom says, in for a penny. And so they just happen to be in front of that kind of knife round backdrop.
Yes.
And he grabs a knife and in slow motion comes towards Marta. And they hit the ground and the knife's in her chest. And he pulls it out and it is a stage knife, a prop knife. It's one of those that, slides
That's
into
really
itself. And he's like, well, there you go. All right, it is. He's foiled in his plot.
Yes.
So,
He's arrested.
He's arrested.
They carry him out. The whole family's outside. Linda comes and puts the baseball back in Harlan's office.
well, we missed a part earlier. So we kind of have this subplot, like we talked about.
Yes.
Harlan threatening Richard, threatening to tell Linda that Richard's having an affair.
Yes.
So at one point, we have Richard come into Harlan's study and to pry open his desk and find that note that he said he was going to give Linda.
Linda, yeah.
And he opens it up. It's in a pink envelope with an L on it. And he opens it up, and it is a blank piece of paper. Nothing's written on it. And Richard's just like, you got to be
He's
kidding,
bluffing, yeah.
bluffing. He just leaves it right there. And so this was really neat. There's a baseball kind of sitting on Harlan's desk, And if you look, there's some eyes that are like looking right at the baseball, kind of like keep your eye on the ball. And so Richard kind of takes the ball and throws it out the window. And you just kind of follow the ball, and
The dogs get
and
it.
Benoit gets it, and then one of the dog brings up the piece of the trellis, and he throws the ball to get the dog distracted so he can have the trellis. And the dog gives the ball back to Linda. And so Linda takes the baseball back into the office, puts it there, and she finds that letter. And she mentioned earlier, they kind of had a secret code. You talk about this one, you like this one.
Yes. So here's my thing. Your father-in-law is a murder mystery writer. Your wife has also mentioned on numerous occasions that you have little games that she plays with her dad. You open a blank envelope. Is it really a blank letter inside? Like, always check. I don't know. I mean, after watching
It's pretty dumb.
National Treasure,
National Treasure
like,
is what I
I'm
was
here
thinking
for it.
about.
Like,
Yeah.
where's the lemon juice? Where's the heat? There's going to be a secret message, right?
Yeah.
He's got a flavor for the dramatics, which I can appreciate. So she takes the letter, lights a cigarette, and as she's reading the letter, she heats it up, and there's the message where her dad reveals, like, hey, he's having an affair. So then, as the ransom's being carted out, we see that Richard now has a black eye, which is great.
Yeah.
Because she punched him, which
Linda's
is perfect.
Gotten her hidden, which is great. And then we have Marta, who's on top of the house. She's wrapped up in a blanket and holding a coffee mug. And it is Harlan's coffee mug that says,
Yes.
my house, my rules.
My coffee.
My coffee.
Which at the
Right.
very beginning, that's how the entire movie opens.
Yes.
With that coffee
With
mug,
that coffee.
yeah.
You see a shot of the mug on a tray, and then it's picked up, and it's Fran taking a breakfast to Harlan. That's where she finds him dead.
Yep.
And so it's just a perfect kind of all the way back around, because it belongs now entirely to Marta.
Yes.
So that's the plot. We went through it. So
We did. I have a few fun facts that I found.
let's
Oh,
listen.
well, let's hear those fun facts.
One of them is the house that they shot in was actually shot in 3 different locations, which is pretty interesting. Apparently, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was in. Did y'all know that?
We
Did
were
y'all know that?
we were reading it up. Did you figure out who he was?
Yes.
So at the very beginning.
At the very beginning, Marta's sister is watching some, I don't even know, some kind of show on her laptop.
A murder mystery or
It is a
detec-
murder
yeah.
mystery, yeah. And then at one point, you hear this voice just yell out, "We have the nanny cam footage!" And apparently that was Joseph Gordon-Levitt. So
And he was in it because he's been in every one of Ryan Johnson's films.
yes.
So had a part in those.
And then also it said the scene where she takes a sip out of the coffee mug at the end was not planned. She just decided to do it, and they were like, "That's awesome. We're keeping it."
That's
Yes.
cool.
Well done. Well
That's
done.
cool.
And some of these facts were kind of dumb. I was just gonna see if there's any others. I told you one about the age. Oh, I was just gonna mention the budget. The budget for the movie was $40 million, and they made $311 million worldwide. So I think they did okay.
I think they did okay.
Well done.
Opening weekend, they did 26 million.
Yeah.
Almost 27. So they almost recouped. They recouped a little over half
yeah.
opening weekend, and then I think it had a big kind of recurrence piece as well, because a lot of people went back at least twice, because there's just a lot of details in this movie. There are a lot.
A
and
lot of nods, like we talked
Yeah.
about, to other murder mysteries.
And
It's
there's
great.
so much going on and like so quickly in this movie. So like the second time watching it through, I think I may have liked it. I don't know, maybe about just as much, but if not more, just because I knew things and knew to watch out for things, but I learned more things as it went on. And it was definitely worth watching 2 or 3 times, I would say.
Yeah.
So now that we've like revealed the whole plot, talked about it,
Mm-hmm.
who or what did you think had happened? Like when we get to the big reveal, when you were watching it the first time, what was your theory before? Like,
Before I knew,
yeah,
like I said before,
I
I
didn't have
know.
a theory.
you didn't have a theory when you were watching it.
No,
No.
I had no idea.
So the whole time I'm watching it, like we have the line early on about the knife and how only a professional would know the difference between a real knife and a prop. So the whole time I'm thinking, Harlan loves dramatic things. He has a very big, flair for stuff. He is a murder mystery writer. He did not kill himself. Like, this has all been staged. He has a lot of money. He can pay off people to do whatever. And they keep showing his portrait through the whole film. So I'm thinking, like, he's behind the portrait, watching this all unfold, and he didn't actually die. That was my theory.
I
And that was
thought-
really sad that he had actually died.
Yeah, I thought something along the same lines that he wasn't dead. I kept expecting, I actually thought at one point that he and Ransom were kind of in on it together and were both not bad, just because they had had that fight. You didn't really know what was going on.
Yeah.
And they kept saying, and Harlan said at the beginning, he's so much like me when I was young, so much like me. And that's when he says, but I'm afraid he can't tell the difference between the prop knife and the real thing, or the stage knife and the real thing.
Yeah.
So I definitely thought he had faked his death in that moment, and that he was testing the family or something like that.
Yeah.
I expected him to come back. So I'm with you. When I found out he was really dead
I was like,
and had slit his
oh.
throat for no reason, I was a little sad. A little Harlan, you know.
Yeah.
So, question for you, hypothetical question. If you were Ransom and you didn't care about morals or ethics or whatever, how would you have done it? How would you have killed him?
I mean, I would have done a lot, like if he was a lot like his grandfather, I would have done a much more dramatic death. But, you know, he did fairly well. He just didn't realize that there would be a mix-up.
Well, in his defense, I don't know, he should know his grandfather, but I'm thinking, not in his defense of murdering his grandfather, of course, but who expects, you know, if you're a murderer and you're going to poison them, who expects the person to slit their throat before you can poison them? You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
Kind of sort of in that. And that's what, they didn't really address this, but, and that's what I was trying to talk about earlier, when he was thrown off by not being able to go upstairs and switch the vials the morning after, because there was so much police tape, because he had slit his throat rather than they just
Yeah.
found him dead.
Yeah.
Like, it never mentions what he was thinking happened during that moment.
No.
It doesn't say like he was wondering how this happened, you know, it just like, we have a week when the story picks up from when he died, and you don't really know what Ransom's like doing this whole time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like trying to figure out how this happened, unless I don't know what he's thinking here, so. I don't know what I
But
would
at
have
the
done.
same time, like Harlan has always, like, everything has been his rules. Literally, like, the
Yeah.
coffee mug is true. Like, everyone gets money on his terms and all this stuff. And so, one of the cool things that Benoit Blanc talks about, and we didn't talk about this, but he actually reveals that he knew Marta was involved, like, the whole time, because she has a drop of blood on her foot. And so the very first time he meets her, he knows, like, she's been involved with this murder. Which was funny because he kept dropping hints of, like, the game is afoot.
She could've
And
had-
Good,
Nose
back
bleeding.
to her foot.
Yeah.
Back to her foot. She could have. But that's why when I was talking earlier about how he was dumb and not picking up on things, I was saying the first time I watched it through, because that's what I was thinking. But at the end, you realize, I think he really knew, even with some of the stuff that was happening, he kind of knew she was, not specifically what she was doing, but she was trying to throw him off a little bit the
Yeah.
whole time.
Yeah.
He knew it all. He was really a very smart guy.
he was
so.
very smart. But he did tell her, you know, like, the way you won this, not because you played by Harlan's rules, but because you played by your own. And so I thought that was a cool moment of, like, Harlan, even to his death, was, like, making his own rules. But
Yeah.
he gave her a plan, and she didn't follow it quite exactly. And that was the reason she ended up winning everything.
Yeah, and they said, you know, she plays to make it right, basically,
Yeah.
to do what's right, and he was playing by his own rules. And if he hadn't played by his own rules, he would still be alive. You
Yeah.
know, that's a thought. So, all right, let's talk about maybe some issues you had with the movie, or little pieces we picked up on that we haven't talked about yet, or just little tidbits here and there. Anybody have any of those?
Anything?
I didn't think of anything.
Yeah. I think since the plot moved so quickly and you learn new information as it goes on so rapidly, I don't think my mind really had time to think of, oh, but there was this plot hole or this issue. So I don't think I had anything that I can think of that wasn't answered. There was a lot of questions I had throughout the whole movie, and like the whole time I'm watching it the first time through, I'm like, are they ever going to address this? They left this hanging. Are they going to come back to this? I'm like, I'm just going to tuck it away later. And literally everything that they answered that I could catch. I don't know if y'all caught something I didn't, but I thought they did a fantastic job at like tying all their loose ends on it. So
Everything, as of like an hour ago, I would have said, or 2 hours ago, I would have said everything is perfect. But Ashley mentioned something that I thought, this makes sense. He jotted down in that little black notebook about the vials and that method of murder. Did no one find that when they investigated the room and read through it? That would be the only thing.
Like
that was a good
his
catch,
most,
Ashley.
That
Good
was
catch.
his most recent, notes too. So it was interesting that they didn't talk about
They may
that.
have just not
I
read
just
through the
thought
book.
of another
though.
one, and it was when at one point they mentioned, "Hey, your medical bag is missing." Talking to Marta when they were looking back at his study again, and then one of the cops says, "Oh, it's probably in evidence." Like I'm sure, like you should probably know. This is your case. You should probably know exactly where it is.
You should probably
Like,
know where it
He
is,
just
sure.
assumes like, "Oh, they probably got it in evidence."
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird.
So.
weird. I did want Great Nana to have a larger part.
I did. We
loved
talked
Great
about that.
Nana.
She was. Whenever she taught ransom, she was pretty funny in those moments. So
Yeah.
that was funny.
Her massive piece of cake that you pointed out, Beth. She had this huge, just this tiny old lady and this massive piece of cake.
When there's one part at the, I think it was at the memorial where Walt's like, "Great Nana, come on, we got to get you something to eat. We got to get you something to eat." And Linda comes up and says, "Don't." She ate the entire salmon spread.
She's fine.
Great
fine.
Nana.
She's
She's
fine.
fine.
She ate the entire salmon
Great
spread
Nana knows
earlier.
how to eat for
Right,
sure.
there you go.
For sure.
A missed opportunity, in my opinion.
Yes.
That was the first thing I thought about leaving the movie. It's Harlan has that great line about the knives, about Ransom not being able to, and basically a Ransom or a fool not being able to, see the difference between a prop knife and the real thing. And then, of course, at the end, that's brought full circle when Ransom tries to kill Marta, and it's a prop knife. I really just wish they had referenced that line. Now, that might be me trying to be too plain and not believing in people to pick up on it a little bit, but I feel like it was a good line opportunity while they're on there, like he's pinned her to the ground with that, and to say something about that. Just a little nod to specific, like to Harlan basically calling that, verbatim.
Yeah.
And he meant it as a metaphor pretty much, but it's used pretty literally here.
By the way, I was going to mention, in reference to last podcast, they did the thing.
They did the
They
thing.
did the thing.
Yeah.
They did the thing. I think it was Blanc
Yes.
at one
Yes.
point just says, "All right, everybody, knives out."
Or he
he's
said
in-
something like, "You're at each other's throats, knives
out,
something like that.
da-da-da-da-da, yeah. And,
so we all looked at each other like, "The thing."
the thing. They did the thing, which I greatly appreciated. So, but that was the only. I felt like that was kind of a missed opportunity for me.
Yeah.
I wish they would have done that. But again, it did bring it full circle with him actually doing it, and we were able to pick up on it because of our great minds. So
Oh, yeah.
it's okay.
And our second viewing.
In our second viewing,
Well, like the one thing that I thought was super weird was Benoit kept talking about donut holes.
I thought it was hilarious.
And
was
it was just so weird.
Get
Like
off
for
the
me, I was like,
donuts,
what is the
dude.
connection with like
It made me
donut
want
holes
a
in this
donut.
case? But he was talking about how like the case was like a donut with a hole missing, and then we get to the end and he's like, we had a donut hole, but that donut hole actually has a hole, and so like
And
it
inside
just,
that hole is another donut
So
with another hole.
it was him just trying to describe how the case was set up, but it was just weird. It was a little weird.
and
so.
it just for me it didn't really tie in.
I did read a fact that Ryan Johnson, the director and writer, after in post-production wanted to take that line, all the references to Donuts out, and Daniel Craig convinced him to keep it in. And
Oh,
it was
really?
the way Daniel Craig portrayed his
funny.
his performance of those parts that won Ryan Johnson over to keeping it in there. So that was pretty funny. So the last little tidbit I want to share is just about the portrait. I don't know if everybody noticed that, but there's a portrait of Harlan throughout the house, and it changes slightly towards the end. And so it's just kind of a portrait of him sitting there, and he's holding the knife that he uses to slit his own throat with. I guess his favorite knife, But he's kind of holding that knife, and he just looks very stoic in the portrait. But at the very end, after all is revealed, Harlan has a little smirk smile on his face. The portrait changes. And somebody said that it was a glimpse of Harlan leaving everything feeling okay, which is what he said he wanted to do with his family. He was at peace with dying, but he wanted to leave everything feeling okay. And so he could do that now that it was all kind of figured out and that Marta had inherited everything. So
And by the way, they have greenlit Knives Out too.
a sequel.
They actually
We're so
they greenlit
excited.
it before it even hit theaters. They were
Yeah.
so confident in it. They're like,
I-
we're doing another.
Yeah, I read it's just going to basically follow Benoit Blanc, and
So
just
it
do
could
a
be a
different
whole
case.
different case. Yeah, I like that. Just completely change it up.
Which
and
I
just follow
like
him.
that for the
Yeah.
sake of like a new story.
Yeah.
So, but I will miss a couple characters. Specifically,
Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis was spectacular as Linda,
Yes.
and
As
then
always.
Grand Nana will be sad not seeing Grand Nana. So, but it was good.
Well, we should probably wrap it up with
Let's
our
wrap it up.
ratings.
Yes.
Did you have something you were going to say? I'm sorry.
Oh, I just had like one little thing that I felt was a little weird
Okay.
about the whole plot. So we've like cut out everybody, speaking of Jamie Lynn Curtis,
Yes.
and Linda, the daughter Linda. So she obviously had a good relationship with her dad. Like he gave her $100 million to start a real estate business, and she actually took that and made something of herself. Has her own business, is successful, doesn't need his money. But they have the game where they write letters, and it's written with special ink, so it only appears with heat. So obviously they have a good relationship, and it did make sense to me why he would cut Linda out too. But
Yeah, we were talking
alas,
about that.
he did.
But she was standing on her own. She wasn't so relying on her father. So I feel like
She didn't need him, but the reason he cut the other ones out was to teach them a lesson. Now, the only, I mean, and I think the only fault really that I can find with Linda is that she was still supporting her husband and son. They were kind of a blind spot for
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
But they had a good relationship. And did you say, like, when he wrote the note to her, it said, "My heart"?
Yes.
Like, you
Yeah.
know, like he addressed it to my heart. They had a great
Yeah.
relationship together. And so
Poor Linda.
You know, poor Linda, because I feel like she was cut off not as a punishment to her. The only punishment part would be because she
Her
was supporting her
associates.
husband and her son there. But I was just like, meh. I just kind of wish, you know.
Yeah.
I just kind of wish
There had been a little part for her.
because they didn't show. And when he talked at the beginning, Harlan, when he was talking to Marta right before he died about how he did it, he cut all four of them off or talked to all four of them. It was talking about Richard. It was talking about Walt and Ransom and Joni. It was not talking about Linda. You know, there was nothing Linda was doing wrong that he needed to rectify. So there you go.
Yeah.
Solid.
Ratings.
All right.
All right, so ratings. Jennifer?
I'm gonna give it a 9.
A 9.
Ooh.
All right.
Good
Right
night.
on. That's pretty solid.
No regrets.
What did I say here? Oh, 8.5. I didn't tell you. In my head, it's an 8.5 for me. I liked it. Okay.
I gave it a 7. I really enjoyed this one.
That's like 10.
I mean,
It's 10 for
it was a
that.
solid film. I liked it.
I'm getting our averages
Oh, you
together.
got it.
Sorry.
Okay, good.
I gave it a 7.5.
Okay.
Really liked it. Had a couple of, like I said, just the things I wish would have happened and a couple of pieces here and there. And Ashley also gave it a 7.5.
Okay.
So that gives the crew review. Oh, I just really messed that up.
Yeah, you
Okay. Oops, give me 1 second. All right, we had a 9.
For
Did you say 9?
That's 9.
Just
Flat
9. John had an 8.5. This is
7.
bad.
I gave it a
9.
15 for the two of you.
Whoa, don't confuse him.
4. Yeah, 15.
4.
Let's see. Drum roll, please. That gives us a 7.9.
There you go.
yeah.
7.9.
Solid
Cool.
film. Check it out if you haven't already.
Mm-hmm.
And next week, we're going to be reviewing Disney's Onward.
Onward.
So check it out on Disney Plus, watch it, and get ready to watch the next episode of the crew review.
Available April 3rd for viewing,
Yes,
right?
April 3rd.
The Onward on Disney Plus.
Yes,
So
exactly.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks for joining us, guys. This was fun.
This
we
was a good
love
one.
talking about movies, and we appreciate your support. Let us know who you thought did it in the comments, because we would love to know.
Before you knew.
and let us know if you
Yeah.
thought this was a practical murder. Was it something that could happen?
Oh, I like that. Yes.
Food for thought.
Good spin.
Mm.
All right.
Jennifer, would you like to take us away? Take it away, Ernie.
Until next time, we go big tonight.
Bye.